Welcome to this short build of the BalsaUSA 1/4 scale SPAD 13. I picked this model up in 2022 with the full intentions of having it flying before 2023. Unfortunately, that did not work out. This actual video is a video of still shots of the construction shots I took during the build, and I just want to go over them, show them, and also talk about modifications and any issues I may have had with the kit. Overall, the kit was reasonably well put together. Was a couple of things which I'll touch on when we get there. Starting off, I decided I would start with the tail feathers, starting off with the stabilizer. Good way to get my hand back into it, get an idea of what the kit material was like and the plans, etc. And of course, the manual on how to put it together. This went along fairly well, good quality material, plans were good, and of course the manual was relatively easy to understand. And again, no difficulties here. As you can see, it's coming along quite nicely. The stabilizer was completed, and then I did the two elevators. They're not joined together; they're separated, and I'll get into the construction on those in a later chapter. So as you can see, things are coming along nicely. One area I did have some concern was when I started working on the rudder and tail fin. The trailing edge of the fin and the leading edge of the elevator were a little bit soft and not really what I wanted, so I exchanged those with some material I happen to have on hand. So at this point, hopefully this was normally where I'd start the wings, but I had some modifications I was going to do. The material didn't arrive, so I decided it was time to start the fuselage. So laying out of the fuselage, and as you can see, it's basically balsa sticks and balsa and plywood slab sides, basically made identical except opposite, and then put together. And this went together fairly well. I did have an issue because I thought that the tail posts, when I brought them together, the fuselage was about a ½ inch too short. So I said, well, I'll add the ½ inch, not realizing that much later on in the manual, there is a spot where that is actually added to it. In this case, it didn't make any difference because it was easily incorporated. So here you can see the sides coming together, lots of clamps. I used a fair amount of epoxy and thick CA on this part of the construction. Well, this is one of the first modifications that I made. The plan shows a metal tail skid, fixed skid, and I did not like that, so I decided to go with something a little more scale with a wooden bungee operated tail skid, and of course a rubber band on there. Now I hope to get some bungee material and replace that. There's also an inspection panel that will be there, it's just underneath the elevator, or pardon me, the stabilizer, so it's easy access to replace that particular area if I run into any difficulties. It seems to be quite functional. I put a little brass shoe on the bottom of it. Hopefully it won't wear out so quickly. At this point, the material had arrived for the modifications to the main wings. Basically, what I was looking at here was, rather than having an 80-inch wingspan with the associated biplane issues of struts and wires and all kinds of stuff that gets in the way for assembly at the field, I decided to make it into a two-piece wing, and actually a three-piece wing, I guess, because the center parts stay together. So basically what I was looking at doing was separating the wings at the fuselage on the bottom wing and at the top cabane struts. And at that point there, I would have two complete wing sets with the inner plane struts, the struts, and the flying wires to hold them together. So that was the plan. The method I used was to fabricate a receiver box that would receive an aluminum bar, 1-inch aluminum bar, and the receiver box was made of plywood and basically allowed the aluminum bar to slide into the box end. What that did involve with the wing was changing out some of the balsa ribs with plywood ribs, because we need to increase the strength in those particular areas. as you can well imagine. So anyway, that went along fairly well, and of course at this point I was not aware how well it was going to come apart, because the separation was not going to happen until the wings were basically complete. That'd be quite a ways down the road yet. So my expectation was it was going to be okay, but there was no way to test it at this particular point. So anyway, the wing continued on after the modification was incorporated in, and as you can see, it started filling in very nicely. Material was good. I had no problem with any of the material on the wing. And as you can see, this is the top wing, and it is the wing that has the ailerons. The bottom wing do not have ailerons. So the ailerons are actually built separately from the wing, as opposed to sometimes they were built with the wing and then cut clear, but these were actually built separately. Just a quick shot of the wheels that just come in, so I had to take a picture of those as well. They're going to be painted to match actually the scheme I'm going to be using is the Eddie Rickenbacker airplane, so that's hopefully what I'm going to end up with. So just another view of the wing, and as you can see, that's on a plywood slab door. It takes the full length, so yeah, it's a fairly long wing, and a lot of work to with all those ribs. It was a lot of work, but again, we build models. That's what we do. We enjoy doing it. The next two photos show construction of the ailerons, and it went along fairly well. Unfortunately, being built separately from the wing and using the plans, well, they actually were aligned with the wing. They didn't match up 100%. I wouldn't do that again. I would actually build them with the wing still there so that the ribs could be lined up. I know that would make it a much easier. Matter of fact, I had to take that apart and redo it again. I wasn't happy. Here's a couple of pictures of the engine I'm using, RCGF 30cc twin. The beauty of this particular motor is it will fit entirely within the cowl. Nothing will be sticking out, no spark plugs, no wires, and that to me is very important on a scale looking model. And I hate to see spark plugs and wires and exhaust pipes and everything else sticking out of a perfect model. At any rate, I was very pleased with that. Hasn't run, it's still brand new obviously, but hopefully it wouldn't be a problem. Another modification I made to the wing was the plans called for the servos to actually have the top part of the servo fully exposed. Not a fan of that, so I decided to make servo boxes and just have the servo output arms up through the slot in the cover. Those are fabricated and ready to go. So it wasn't a lot of work, but I think it pays dividends towards the end. At this point, the top wing was started, and again, because of the ability to take the wings apart, I had to incorporate exactly the same thing on the top wing as I did on the bottom wing. So basically the aluminum bar and the receptacle boxes. So a fair amount of building involved there to get everything working well, and it has to be snug. It can't be sloppy, but it can't be so tight that you can't slip and slide it back and forth. So it was a bit slow process, but it actually came out quite well. I was quite pleased with it. Yeah, again, lots of ribs. You have to be prepared for a lot of ribs, and if you're like me, a little clumsy sometimes, you're going to break a few, so you have to be prepared to prepare them or replace them, depending on how badly they were done. Again, enjoyable project, but at this point, after 52 ribs, it starts getting a little tedious, so I was kind of happy to see the end of this particular build coming along, especially the rib portion. Putting together the leading edge here. Again, the material on the top wing was really, really good. I had no issues with that whatsoever. So that made that part of it a little more pleasurable, that's for sure. These next shots give a pretty good idea of how the separation works. As you can see, the two plywood ribs together, and that is where the separation point will be when it finally comes time to separate the wings. I'm hopeful that this is going to work out reasonably well. As you can see, another good shot of the two ribs together, and the associated hard points that are going to be on either side of that. So there's the wing pretty much finished. As you can see, the plywood hard points there for the struts, the interplane struts, and also the wing tips are coming together and starting to give it that shape. Really like the scallop trailing edge on these. That's very characteristic of this particular airplane. Actually, a lot of the old First World War airplanes. So this is getting pretty much to the point where it's ready to be put aside now. Ready for the final sanding and ready for covering. So here's the two wings side by side, and as you can see, they do take up a fair amount of space. When the thing is finally put together, it's going to be a bit of a beast, I think. Another picture of it standing by my workbench. Again, gives it a general idea of the physical size. This next series of photos shows the modifications I made to the elevator control. The plans called for exterior nylon wires coming out to control horns. I decided to go more scale with the interior, or internal rather, connection. And this basically is the arm I made up, and that connection point will be inside the fuselage. These next shots show the bottom wing mounting hardware, and basically there's also in the bottom wing will be the attachment points for the landing gear. So those hard points are installed as well. And again, it takes some time to get everything lined up and level, and a fair amount of epoxy on these are crucial components of the build, so you want to make sure that they're good. A good clear shot here of the wing with the wing hold down bolts, mount on bolts, and also the front rear landing gear hardwood blocks. This was when I was setting the incidence for the bottom wing to the fuselage, and it came out marginally within a sliver. So I was very pleased that they came out that well. And basically at this point I'm getting ready. I had to make a jig for the conveyance struts to get the the attachment points exactly right. And this was in the plans, so I basically laid it out, put it together, and had it ready for when the conveyance were ready to be put on the fuselage. The conveyance struts will require some modification, particularly the attachment points. Normally it would just be a single bolt, but as you can see they're fairly wide, and the reason for that is there'll be two bolts because these are over the separation point for the wings when they finally do come apart. Well, that's about it for this chapter. Thank you for watching, and stay tuned, more to come.